This interview was originally recorded for the Steve Hatherly Show on TBS EFM. He was born in Havana, Cuba, into musical surroundings, you could say. His father was a very talented vocalist. He grew up a fan of British and American rock and roll before returning to his Cuban musical roots, forming his band, Sierra Maestra. That happened in 1978. Later, he became a key, integral part of the Buena Vista Social Club and the Afro-Cuban All-Stars. We have to talk about music today. We have to talk about performances today. We have to talk about culture today. We have a lot to talk about. Juan de Marcos Gonzalez joins me for this week's Music Speaks. Sir, such a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you very much for giving me a chance to be in touch with your audience. For me, it's a pleasure indeed.
So what were you listening to then back in the late 60s, early 70s, the American and British rock and roll?
Yeah, because it was a music in fashion in my country. You know, in Cuba, it's a very special place. Well, we listen to all kind of music, and then we decide which kind of music to perform, or which kind of music to be in touch with. And when I was a kid, this is normal. You go to the music that's in fashion, and then it was a fashion, the American and British rock and roll. And I love the bands. I still listen a lot of rock and roll from the old times because I'm already an old guy. My favorite rock and roll is that of my youth. I mean, the 70s, especially the 70s. Bands like Yes, Jethro Tull, King Crimson, Santana, Rolling Stones, even the Beatles. And for a long time, I was playing, not for a long time, let's say about 3-4 years, I was playing rock and roll. I was a lead guitar player in several rock bands in my country. But at a certain point of my life, I realized that I had to turn my eyes to the music of my country, the music I grew up with. And then we created, not in 78, but in 76, we created Sierra Maestra. In 78, the band was already well known in the university environment. But we became really nationwide famous back in 1980. The band was number one in my country for a few years, which is very difficult in Cuba, which is a very competitive country. And we did it, and we created that band. The band is still going.
Wow.
The only difference is that when we created the band, we were a band of young guys, really young guys performing traditional Cuban music. But because we were coming from the rock and roll, we used to jump on stage, something like Van Halen and these kind of things. And it was very attractive for the people of our generation. And we became really, really famous. Sierra Maestra was and is a great band.
What was it that made you said you had a moment when you realized you had to get back to Cuban music? Was there a specific thing that happened in your life, or what was that moment that made you feel like that?
When we arrived to university, when we were studying at the university, the music in our country was moved a little bit to this kind of Pan-Americanism that existed in my country in the period. And we wanted to create a band to perform in the university, to play university festivals and this stuff. So we thought initially to play Brazilian music. But once we were talking about the band that we were supposed to create, and my daddy was there, and he said, well, instead of playing Brazilian music, why you don't create a band, a traditional lineup band, septeto, to play Afro-Cuban music? And I'm completely sure that you are going to be successful. And we did it. And then, we started playing that kind of music. We were coming from rock and roll bands, so I had to study how to play the tres, which is the lead guitar for the traditional Cuban music. And then we prepared a couple of songs, and we performed at the university, in our faculty, we performed in a festival and we got the first prize. We were awarded for our performance, and we were so happy. But there's the influence as well of some bands. My daddy showed us the influence that in rock and roll had the Cuban music. You know, Cuban music is perhaps the most influential music coming from the third world. And then I remember Santana. Santana was playing well, in certain sense, he was playing Cuban music. And he was very famous. Santana was an influence in our change. And then we started playing the traditional Cuban music, and we've been playing this kind of music so far for almost 40 years. And we're happy we've been successful.
So talk to me about music in Cuba in the 1980s. Your band started late 1970s and 80, you guys were huge, but through that decade in Cuba musically, what was happening then?
Well, Cuba is a revolutionary country in musical terms. You know, we were isolated of the world after 1961 when the relationships between Cuba and America had a breakdown. But the music in Cuba kept developing. In this period was in fashion in Cuba, a kind of music that we call proto-timba or timba, traditional timba. The music was up-tempo and with a lot of breaks and power. Bands like Iraquere, that was created in the 70s, they were playing during the 80s. Bands like Ritmo Oriental, Los Van Van. Van Van changed completely the tempo, because the tempo was really up-tempo initially, and then they changed because the up-tempo is a little bit difficult for the dancers. And then they created a new style, a little bit slower. And then the music kept developing during the whole 80s. It kept developing, you know, in late 60s and during the 70s in America, started a movement that's called La Salsa. They were playing basically the music that we used to play during the 50s, but with the sound of the city. I mean, in salsa is more a sociological term than a musicological term.
Interesting.
You know, because basically the genres that they used to play were the genres that we had before from the 50s and 40s in our country. So the music kept developing, and we played in a different way, because you play according to the place where you are, you know, and everything in Cuba was moving really fast. So the musicians were playing up tempo, because you reflect what's happening in the society in your music.
Yeah.
Know what I mean? So the music in Cuba during the 80s was absolutely great, absolutely outstanding. And we created several new genres during the period. Of course, we had the traditional bands playing in the traditional way of the 50s and 40s, but we had new bands and even old bands playing the music in a different way. Know what I mean? And creating different genres and creating a different style for performing the music.
Interesting. Let's go to, well, first of all, I have to say congratulations for two different reasons. Congratulations on the 25th anniversary of the Buena Vista Social Club recordings. Also,
Thank
congratulations. You. We have to say this too. Congratulations on the 25th anniversary of A Toda Cuba Le Gusta, which was the recordings done for the Afro-Cuban All-Stars at the same time that the Buena Vista Social Club recordings were happening.
Yes.
So first of all, congratulations on both of those achievements. 25 years.
Yeah, thank you.
It's a long time.
Thank you very much. 25 years is a long time, right?
Yeah. So tell me how that came to be. I actually talked to Nick Gold recently, a few weeks ago, about his experience with the recordings. But tell us where you were in your life, and then how those projects came to be.
Well, I was working with Sierra Maestra back in 1994, I believe. Yes, we recorded for Nick an album with Sierra Maestra called Dum Dum Banza, which was very successful from the point of view of world music, of course. And then we created a relationship. And then Nick wanted to make an album that we used to call Cuban Descarga. Cuban Descarga means Cuban jam session, Cuban jam. Mm. And then he wanted to do it. And he thought about Jesus Alemany, who was the lead trumpet of, the trumpet player of Sierra Maestra, and was living in London because he got married to a common friend called Lucy Duran. And then Jesus signed a contract with a company called Ryko Disc for 5 albums. So he couldn't do it. And then once I was in London doing the promotion for my Dum Dum Banza's album for the world circuit. And we were talking about his idea. And I told him, well, I would like to do it. And I want to do it because I had in my mind for a long time the idea to make an album to tribute my daddy and the people of the generation of my daddy. Mm. And then we came to an understanding to record this album, the Cuban Jam, with a big band. And we used to call this album the Big Band's album. And then at the same time, Nick wanted to make an album, to produce an album using the music of the eastern side of the island. You know, the music in the West is a little bit different than the music of the East. Mm-hmm. The urban eastern music of Cuba, because he was in love with the music of people like Guillermo Portavale and Miguel Matamoros, Compay Segundo, Nico Saquito, these guys. And then we came to an understanding to record both albums. And he thought that should be great to bring for the Eastern album. I mean, the music, we used to call the album Eastern album because we didn't have a name at the time.
Oh, wow.
And then, we didn't have a name. And then I got back to Havana. I looked for the musicians, most of them friends of my daddy, some of them friends of my daddy, older people that I really admire, people of the third age, basically, and mixed with some young guys, of course. And then I wrote all the arrangements and the music for the Big Band's album, because for the big band, you need papers. You have to give the shirts to a musician. They are going to be there and then perform. Okay. It's different than when you are playing with a smaller band. And then we created a repertoire in advance for the Eastern album. He wanted to bring, Nick wanted to bring Ray Cooder, who recorded with him an album called Talking Timbuktu, that probably you know, with Alifa Kature, and a couple of African musicians, because to give this touch of world music to the album. But at the end, the people from Africa couldn't come.
They couldn't get visas, right? It was visa.
No, problem. They couldn't get visa because we Cuban, we didn't have an embassy in Mali. So they sent the passports to parties and the passports were lost. Oh, so at the end, they didn't come. So in 1996, I was in Cuba preparing everything. And in 1996, in March, we got into a studio and then we recorded first the Big Band's album without a name yet. We recorded the Big Band's album, and then after that, Rai arrived, and then we recorded the second album, the Eastern album. At the end, the Big Band's album was named Afro-Cuban All-Stars, the band. Mm-hmm. And then the second album was called Buena Vista Social Club because we played a dance song in the album called Buena Vista Social Club, featuring Ruben Gonzalez. Yeah. And then because we are talking about world music, in world music, you don't have the resources to really promote and market the music with a lot of money. You don't have the resources. And then we created a band to perform the music of the 3 albums, because at the end we recorded the 3rd album for Ruben Gonzalez. Everybody fell in love with Ruben. who was a great piano player and an excellent person. And then we created a band. We called the band the Afro-Cuban Stars, and we went on tour in 1997. I believe it was April 1997, and we started touring. Everything was absolutely outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. Initially, of course, we played smaller places, but then we started playing really big places and bringing a lot of people. At the end, we had great demand. So we split the bands, and I kept the Afro-Cuban All Stars in order to play, all styles of Cuban music, because you cannot keep on the old times if you wanted to project your work to the future. So I kept my Afro-Cuban All Stars and mixed. That's what I've been doing all my life, mixing all styles of music in my concert. I play concert music, I play all styles, all genres of Cuban music, and I play contemporary music as well. And then we created a band for Ibrahim Ferrer that we called the Buena Vista Social Club. And with Omara, Ruben, but it was a big band. It wasn't an Eastern style lineup. It was a big band, 5 saxes, 3 trumpets, 2 trombones. And we created that band for Ibrahim Ferrer. And then we've been touring. They were touring until the real Buena Vista Social Club was touring until the end of the old guys, because they were old. So they passed during the early 2000s. They passed away, and then they created a new Buena Vista Social Club, because they were using the name. I mean, the manager of the band, who is a Spanish guy called Florestano. And I kept my Afro-Cuban All Stars. We have been so far, both bands, selling out concerts worldwide. And my last concert was in January 31st, 2020. And I brought 2,000 people to Strathmore Center for the Arts here in Maryland. So everything's great. And all concerts of the Buena Vista Social Club, even the new lineup without Ibrahim Ferrer, without Ruben Gonzalez, was very successful during the last times.
What was that like? I mean, the Buena Vista Social Club album won a Grammy, but then, I mean, going and playing places like Carnegie Hall and playing in Amsterdam and playing in Austria, in Vienna, and getting a 20, I think it's 20, Nick and I were talking about a 20-minute standing ovation that had never happened before. I mean, what was it like for you? What did that feel like? Because you were coming from Cuba playing, you were very popular in Cuba, but all of a sudden you just, boom, just exploded all around the world. What did that feel like at that time?
Yeah, we felt really happy, because we were representing our country. And we were sure that the music of our country, we are sure that the music of our country is great. And with the Buena Vista Social Club, we recovered the place that we had before, because during the first half of up to 1961, the Cuban music was the most important third world music in the world. You have these bands in Africa playing rumba, what they call rumba, but what they call rumba is son. Bands like Baobab, like the great Franco, all of these African musicians coming from Congo, they were playing Cuban music. Cuban music, it was very influential, but we lost the place that we had. With the Buena Vista Social Club project, we recovered the place that we had. So we were so happy to play places like the Carnegie Hall sold out. I remember that once we played the Hyde Park, both bands, my Afro-Cuban All Stars and the Buena Vista Ibrahim's Buena Vista Social Club original. It was back in 2000, I believe, 2001, 2002. I don't remember exactly. And we brought 14,000 people.
Wow.
To the Hyde Park. More people than Elton John. Elton John played, I don't know, a couple of days before, or I don't know, a week before, and we brought more people than Elton John. And it was something special for us. We were representing our country. We were so proud that the music, the original traditional music of our country was so popular and so accepted by the people, even for people of a different culture. Because, well, in New York, you can find people from everywhere.
Sure.
New York is or London, but Amsterdam or Australia. We played several places where the Cuban music were not so well known, and we brought a lot of great audiences to our concerts, and this was absolutely outstanding. We felt so happy, and I'm still happy, when I think about what happened 25 years ago when we arrived to studio, when we were all together performing and recording in this great environment with the nice vibrations that we captured when we were there. It is something absolutely outstanding. I'm so happy of the 25th anniversary and that Nick is doing this release special edition.
Yeah, the remastered version with some extra footage and stuff that was never seen before. But I'll ask you the same question that I asked Nick. And his answer was yes. But at the time that you were doing those recordings, did you realize that you were doing something that was going to be really, really special in terms of music history and in terms of recorded music in history? Did you know at that point, or was it only after that you realized?
No, I knew that yes, we were doing something special, something great. In cultural terms, what I never thought was that we'll be becoming so popular worldwide, or that the music that we recorded will turn a commercial success. Because it's not normal that an album or a set of albums featuring people of the third age suddenly become a commercial success. It is not normal. And then I never thought that will become so popular and that will become a commercial success and that will sell, I don't know, millions of copies. No. But I knew absolutely that we were doing something absolutely special in cultural terms, and that the album will be very well received, and that the critics should be great, and that we were doing history with this recording.
It's hard to believe that this maybe would have never happened for you, because you were teaching at one time and you had a conversation with your wife and you said, honey, I think I should pursue music professionally. And she said to you, go for it. And that's when you made the decision. And now look at what's happened in your life. I mean, it's really unbelievable how life can turn out, isn't it?
Yeah. You never know what's going to happen. I was playing music at the time. Of course, I was teaching at the university, and at the same time, I was performing with Sierra Maestra. But I never thought that I'd live all my life, because my goal was to keep teaching at the university, researching, and doing this kind of stuff, but at the same time writing my spare time, write music for the bands of my friends, compose some music for them, and if they wanted to record it, they could record it, you know what I mean? But I never thought to live my life out of music, and I've been able to do it, which is very difficult. This is the reason why my daddy never wanted me to be a musician.
Well, you can look at him and say, I think I made the right decision, Daddy.
Yeah, of course.
So what advice then would you give young people these days in Cuba or in Korea or in Australia or France or wherever, young people who are faced with the same decision that you were faced with at one point in your life, where maybe they're thinking, I have this dream, but I'm not sure if I should pursue it or not? What would you say to young people around the world who are feeling like
that? They have to follow their hearts. They have to do whatever they have inside, and they have to be in peace with their own demons. This is the first thing. And the second, that they have to stand on their roots. Of course, they can pray to the future. They can do new things. They can use which is in fashion, but standing on their roots. You have to create from your roots, standing on your land, standing on your culture, and then from there, go ahead. These are my two advices.
Inspirational words. Let's talk about Korea. We were chatting. You've never been over here to perform a show.
Never in my life, never. I believe that Ibrahim was there with the Buena Vista Social Club. Mm-hmm. I believe the first Ibrahim's lineup. But I've never been there. I've been nearby. I've been in Singapore, I've been in China, I've been in Japan several times, but never in South Korea. I would like to perform there at some point. I don't know for how long time I'm going to keep performing because I'm already 67 years old, which is, by the way, the age of Ibrahim when I brought him to studio for the recording of the Buena Vista Social Club sessions. So I'm already 67.
Right, yeah.
But I think that I will be able to do it. And for me, it should be indeed a pleasure to perform in Korea. It's a great country with an ancient history. It's a country of warriors. And for me, it should be a pleasure to be in touch with South Korean people, with Korean people.
But you're not completely foreign to the country, because you told me that when you were living in Mexico, you used to go out and eat Korean food all the time, yeah?
Yes. Here in America, I cannot find so many Korean restaurants, but in Mexico, there are many Korean restaurants, and there is a Korean community in Mexico. And I used to go to restaurants, and I love the food. It's really outstanding. And I love the way they write, because it is a different way. It is a different characters than Chinese or Japanese. And it's a very interesting country with an ancient history. And then I would like to perform there. But I'm in touch with that. I have a friend, a Korean friend in Cuba. She's been there for, 45, 50 years. She's already old, a lot older than me. And she had her grandchildren there in Cuba. She married a Cuban guy. And I worked with her for a short while. She was normally my translator when I was working with Japanese people, because she speaks every language in Asia. I mean, Korean, she speaks Japanese and Chinese, and she's a very good friend of mine. Her name is Keiko, which is a Japanese name, but she is from Korea.
Got it.
And a close friend.
What do you think about, I mean, you're a world famous musician who's had a very long career. What do you think about the music industry these days? And more specifically, what do you think about these big Korean groups that are having such a massive influence around the world, like BTS, for example, all of a sudden just became the world's #1 band, like the Beatles of 2021. What do you think about that when you see it?
Yep, they are absolutely outstanding. They are playing, they are absolutely great. And I'm not very familiar with traditional Korean music, and I don't know exactly if they are using some elements or not, but I know that they are huge. They are top. They are top, and I'm very happy that they are so successful, and they are going to, I suppose that even when they are in the commercial way, that they are going to keep doing great things, because you can be in the commercial way and do things like Queen, like the great rock and roll bands of the old times. And the industry, perhaps I'm too old, but I don't like this digital world. Yeah. I prefer things like what Nick does. This 25th anniversary with 2 vinyl albums and 2 CDs with the music, because never, when you compress the music, you are losing frequencies. Of course, there are people that cannot listen to these frequencies. I can. And then there's an emphasis in the low end, because the fashion was before, about 20, 25 years ago, the hip hop. Then there's an emphasis in the low end, and sometimes you lose some high top in the music, you know. So I don't like this digital world. I believe that they're coming back to 4416, 44 kilohertz, 16 bits, which is the proper. This is the CD format, and I believe that this is a lot better than being listening to compressed music. The music, everything's commercial, but there are a lot of people taking care of their roots and even doing commercial music, taking care of their roots. And this is all right. This is okay. I believe that if we turn our eyes to the CD format, the people's going to be listening better the music. It's a lot better, a lot better.
I was playing, I have a record player in my house, and I was playing Louis Armstrong and Ella Fitzgerald for my friend the other day. And I was explaining how when they recorded this at that time, that's them in the studio, and what you're hearing is what they did. And nowadays,
of course,
you can have a singer in London and you can have the drummer in New York, and it doesn't matter. You can just record it and put it all together. I think now the way music is put together, it loses its romantic side a little bit. It doesn't mean that it's not good music. It doesn't mean that at all. It's just not as pure as it was. Would you agree?
No, of course, it is not. It is not. And right now, there's too much technology added to the music. And then if you want to be a singer during the 40s, you should be a singer. Because Ella or Billie Holiday, they go to studio, they have the band behind, they had great engineers setting up the mics, probably only a couple of mics, one for the band and one for the singer, and you can listen to everything. And you can capture, you can listen to the spirit of the place where they were performing, you know, because if you record your drummer in Australia and your guitar player they are not seeing each other. They are not, you know, because there's something that is the community sense of the people that's doing some action at the same time. There's a kind of common spirit, a common feeling. You know, it's not the same time. It's not the same thing. This is the reason why I record only live performances. And this was the way Buena Vista Social Club was done.
I was just about to say, and the difference is music is made these days for maybe commercial purposes only. You could argue that, some would disagree with that. But when you listen to the album, the Buena Vista Social Club, and when you listen to the Afro-Cuban All-Stars, you do not get that sense at all. Well, what a treat to speak with you, Juan de Marcos Gonzalez. I'll say it again. It's the 25th anniversary of the Buena Vista Social Club recordings. It's the 25th anniversary of the Afro-Cuban All-Stars, A Toda Cuba Le Gusta. Go check out both of those albums if you haven't. And just check out the music of the Afro-Cuban All-Stars, because you've got a master in Juan de Marcos Gonzalez leading that group right there. Sir, it was such a pleasure to speak with you. And I certainly hope we have the opportunity to do it again. And should you ever get over to here to Korea, our radio studio door is always open for you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for giving me a chance. And I hope to see you in the future.
Absolutely. Be safe and stay healthy.
Okay. Yeah, I'll try. Of course.
It's not often in your life one gets to speak with such a musical legend as Juan de Marcos Gonzalez, but not just a great musician. What a humble, lovely, lovely man. I thoroughly enjoyed that, and I hope you did as well. Please do hit subscribe, hit like, share the video, and leave a comment below. Much appreciated, and we'll see you back here for the next one.